Hey guys, it's God Bars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 41st episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. Switching back over to the West, I'm gonna discuss another game-changing moment that helped make West Coast hip-hop a phenomenon, Snoop Dogg's G-Funk masterpiece, Doggystyle. Prior to its release, there was already plenty of anticipation for Snoop's solo debut, mainly through his killer verses on The Chronic the previous year. Many would even argue Snoop was the standout rapper on that album, and he was a huge part of making Dr. Dre's vision fully realized. Status-wise, Snoop is in an extremely selective club of the most famous rappers alive. He's definitely in the top 5. Like, I've met people who just know nothing about hip-hop and tell me they've never once heard of Nas, Wu-Tang Clan, or A Tribe Called Quest. I even had a coworker in my previous job who didn't even realize that Biggie Smalls and Notorious B.I.G. weren't two separate people. The point being, as hard as it may be to believe, there really does seem to be an amount of people who've never heard of Biggie or Tupac. However, I've never in my life met someone who didn't at least know who Snoop Dogg was. The only other rappers still alive with that type of ring to their names are probably Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, 50 Cent, Kanye, and Jay-Z. However, the double-edged sword with this level of fame is some people will overlook the actual MC abilities and contributions to the game someone like Jay or Snoop has under their belt. When you've grown up with these guys being huge figures your entire life, it's easy to avoid the old classic material they put out because you think you already know what it has to offer. But speaking for myself, I was heavily impressed and surprised the first time I actually heard Doggy Style all the way through. Snoop's status as hip hop's resident stoner was accentuated with a younger crowd through the Mac and Devin Go to High School movie and the smash hit single that accompanied it, Young, Wild, and Free. This made a younger me kind of just assume weed was all Snoop ever rapped about, and that was okay since it was his niche. However, one full listen of Doggy Style makes that assumption laughable, as you realize he wasn't really talking about weed much more than any of his contemporaries at the time. I think the Nate Dogg, smoke weed every day, along with the memes and popularity of The Chronic, can deceive you into assuming Snoop was an artist reserved for smoking weed to. In reality, his debut solo album covers all the bases lyrically, and by delivering on the hype he built up through his features on The Chronic, he managed to accomplish the impressive feat of having his very first solo album debut at #1 on Billboard. Through a fresh and unique style, Doggy Style sold over 800,000 copies in the first week alone, helping solidify G-Funk as a movement and not just a subgenre regional to Oakland, Compton, or Long Beach. However, it is worth mentioning that it's heavily disputed where the actual term G-Funk originated. The credit has traditionally been given to Dre, but this has actually been challenged by Cold 187 of Above the Law, who maintains he coined the name and sound. Regardless of who actually first used the phrase G-Funk, it's impossible to deny that there were many names that helped popularize and develop it. You really can't give credit solely to one person. Even still, I think Snoop being able to stay relevant with a younger audience has helped him become the face of G-Funk alongside Dr. Dre. Something I personally really appreciate about this album is how you get to hear Snoop in a raw, hungry state that he understandably got further and further from the longer he was rich and famous. It's something that happens to many rappers, where their initial work has an element that's hard to rekindle once they're really wealthy and well known, because when they're struggling, they have endless inspiration. They have personal problems and experiences to share and dreams of what they do if they weren't in their given situation. If you've been extremely rich and famous for 30 years and can quite literally have anything you want that you see, I imagine it's a lot harder to find inspiration. I think it's why a lot of rappers at that level end up just talking about all of their expensive possessions, because a normal person can go for a walk for inspiration, but someone as recognizable as Snoop Dogg really can't do that. I think that's the important lesson I had to learn when I first gave this album a chance, because I'd only heard the stuff Snoop made once he was already rich and famous, and assumed that's how Doggy Style was. But this album had an ear to the streets as much as you feasibly could have, especially the streets of West Coast areas like Long Beach and Compton. He really takes you on a journey through his neighborhood, and he says as much on one of my favorite moments on the entire thing, which is Snoop's verse on the Killer Posse Cut Serial Killer. The lineup on this track is already stellar, with appearances by the DOC, RBX, and the Dog Pound. And the contrast they provide makes Snoop's verse even more attention grabbing. He comes in with The cloud becomes black and the sky becomes blue. Now you in the midst of the dog pound crew. Ain't no clue on why the fuck we do what we do. Leave you in a state of paranoia. Ooh, don't make a move for your gat so soon, 'cause I drops bombs like platoon. Walk with me, hold my hand and let me lead you. I'll take you on a journey and I promise I won't leave you. Another moment on here that's one of my all-time favorite Snoop verses comes in the form of Murder Was the Case, which was actually written a year prior to his murder charge, but since he didn't catch that case until 93, it made it look like the song was in direct reference to the situation. Honestly, I always thought it was until doing research for this video, but maybe everyone already knew that and I'm just embarrassing myself. Either way, this track is arguably the best instrumental on here, which is this sinister, menacing beat that perfectly complements the subject matter. The track starts with Snoop getting jumped and shot, and he tells a story detailing his conversation with God as he bleeds out. It's a pretty poignant concept, and Snoop executes it perfectly with, "As I look up at the sky, my mind starts tripping, a tear drops my eye, my body temperature falls, I'm shaking, and they break in, trying to save the dog. Pumping on my chest and I'm screaming, I stop breathing, damn, I see demons. Dear God, I wonder, can you save me? I can't die, my boo-boo's about to have my baby." While Dr. Dre's the only producer credited on here, there are a number of dope features outside of the ones on Serial Killer that I previously mentioned. We have Death Row members and affiliates like the Lady of Rage, Daz Dillinger, Nancy Flesher, Nate Dogg, Warren G, Corrupt, Lil Malik, and The Dramatics. This is another pretty perfect album, so I want to give some honorable mentions before my main three, like G-Funk Intro, The Shiznit, Who Am I, or What's My Name, Pump Pump, and Lottie Dottie, which is a dope tribute of sorts to Slick Rick. I opted to leave out Gin and Juice because I think it goes without saying how iconic that track is. I don't think it's really needing of a recommendation. My top three favorite tracks personally would have to be Murder Was the Case, Serial Killer, and Ain't No Fun If the Homies Can't Have None. Thank you for watching my 31st video. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off Snoop's crowning achievement are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.